This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders who are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and we are jumping into part 2 of our conversation with Michele Herlein, author of Cultural Excellence, and this is where things get real. In part 1, we talked about why so many workplaces struggle with culture. In this one, Michele lays out the steps leaders need to align teams, strengthen the middle layer, and build systems people can feel. If you want a culture that sticks, this is the blueprint. Michele Herlein, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be back. Thanks, Joe.
Oh, you're very welcome, Michele. So last time we really got into sort of your journey, how you got here, a lot of the strategies you have in place, but now we're going to get into the nitty gritty today. And I want to start with what culture transformations, and you talk about how they're hard work, takes a lot of commitment, takes folks like you to come in and help things out. But why do you think leaders underestimate it? Like the actual, maybe that you'll have leaders that underestimate culture in general, but like underestimate the actual process of that transformation.
I think that leaders like to do things fast. They want things to happen fast and they want them to happen quick. And it's not just that it takes time, it takes consistency. So when you're doing a culture transformation, you have to remember that, there's a saying that you have to say something 7 to 10 times before someone actually can process it. And so that's the same with leaders already know what they want and they already feel like they've communicated it, but it takes time to get an entire organization behind the direction that you're taking them.
And you mentioned in the book that 70% of workplace change efforts fail. That's a really high number. And you kind of broke down a lot of it had to do with the fact that like the consistency and such. But man, 70%?
70%, yes, of change efforts. And it is a lot about consistency, but it's also about having a clear direction and knowing what problem you're trying to solve and the path to get there. And and then it is about getting your other leaders on board. And so they have the skill and knowledge and the information so that they can help you lead the change. They're the face of the organization to the majority of your employees. And if they don't know what to do, they're stuck in the middle, basically.
And I love metaphors, and you have a good one. You tie in culture and exercise, and
Yeah.
that values can get flabby. What is flabby? I know what flabby looks like on me, but what does flabby look like when it comes to culture?
So flapping when it comes to culture is again, it's decoration on a wall that's just sitting there as opposed to something that is lived and felt in your organization. So I do use the analogy of an exercise in the book. And so just like if you go to the gym once or if you eat one healthy meal, you're not going to be a healthy person. So if you document your values, if you communicate them once instead of embedding them in the entire processes of the organization and all levels of leadership and people in the organization, it's going to get flabby and flimsy and just be decoration on a wall.
Nice. Yeah, we talked about that last time too. So I want to
Yeah.
get into horizontal alignment. You get into it in chapter 3 and 4 of your book, and you talk about that you've been in a room with executive teams who say, "Yep, we're all aligned," but
Yeah.
the data says otherwise. What does misalignment at the top really look like? Because I think we can all picture it, but like, can you put it into words?
Yeah, and it's even more dangerous when everyone's sitting around the conference room table or the boardroom table and they're shaking their heads and saying they're aligned, but then they go out to their parts of the organization and communicate that we don't have to listen to what they're saying up there. That blows up the whole initiative. And so that's more dangerous because it's not as obvious. Sometimes it happens where there are leaders who are just like, why are we spending our time on this? In one organization that I worked with, that is the CEO said the one thing that he regrets is not letting go of the leaders who weren't aligned sooner. So he waited about 2 years and he said he would give them about 6 months to get on board and aligned with the direction. And if they weren't, then they needed to part ways because it wasn't something that was up for discussion. So there are times when some leaders on the team think that the priorities should be different than a focus on culture because culture sometimes is seen as soft or fluffy. And it is a pathway to get results where a lot of executive leaders, all they want is results.
And during this culture transformation, you can give me 3 or you give me 1 or give me 2. What are some of the biggest mistakes that execs will make during this transformation period?
The absolute biggest mistake is to tolerate behaviors that they say are important, tolerate behaviors that are opposite of what they say is important. So saying that one value or one behavior is important, but then tolerating behaviors of executive leaders that are not behaving in ways that exhibit the values of the organization. And unfortunately, I've seen that happen all too often. There have been executives who make bad decisions. They um, act in poor ways and other people see it, and if their leader, their manager tolerates it, and people don't see consequences to this opposing behavior, then again the whole initiative breaks down and your culture becomes the behavior of the leader, not what you're espousing it to be. It becomes what people are actually doing, not what you say you think is important.
And let's get a little bit in your work too, because if you don't mind taking me behind the scenes, how do you help leaders model the values instead of merely endorsing them? Like you said, like they'll talk about here are our values, but then won't actually do anything. How do you actually do it, Michele? Because as we all know, leaders can have a bit of an ego about them. They don't like to be told things or told how to do things. So
Yes.
how do you do that without again revealing too much of your secret sauce? I think people will be curious, like, what does Michele Herlein do when she walks in there?
Yeah. Well, the most important thing is that leaders believe that feedback is a gift. And I've worked with leaders who have not. I actually have been told by one leader, I was new working with him, and he said, "Why don't you just go back in your HR corner?" And so I looked at him and I said, I can do that and I can stay in my HR corner. But from my experience, is the leaders that I've worked with who are open to feedback and open to insight and observations are usually the best leaders and get the best results. So, um, establishing a culture of continuous improvement, which also means improvement for ourselves and always knowing that we can do better and get better and being open to the observations of other people and that it's information that can help you grow and develop. You don't need to be afraid of it because if you don't have the information, you can't use it. But if you have the information, you can choose whether you agree or disagree and want to change something or not. So being open, listening, and establishing the culture of continuous improvement, which also takes vulnerability.
Nice. One of the dirty words of the business world over the last couple of years has been manager. Like, there's probably been a million books. Be a leader, don't be a manager, and there's almost like I don't know what to say, like a negative connotation to the word manager. And you talk about the fact that no, managers are pretty important. You call them the mighty middle.
Yeah.
Why are they so crucial? And why do you think they get such a bad rap? Because I think we could all picture, oh, the manager's like the check the box person. They don't care about, they don't show empathy. All they care about is getting the job done. They're not worried about their leadership skills, blah, 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 blah. Yet, at the end of the day, Michele, we can poop on managers all we want. We still need them.
Yes, exactly. And there's a lot of talk and discussion about managing versus leading and what is the difference between the two. And there might be different things between the words managing and leading, but I think managers are leaders. Anyone who has the responsibility for managing other people in an organization is a manager of people and in a leadership role. So it's very important that they are part of the process, and they are the ones that are communicating to the departments and the people who report to them. And the I call them the mighty middle because they're the translators, but between the executive team who's setting the direction, setting the strategy, making a lot of the big decisions, but they're the ones that actually have to implement them and explain them to the people and departments that report to them. So I think they're very mighty. A lot of times, especially with the flattening of organizations and the removing of management layers, they also have their own work. So they're managing the work of other people and they have their own workload at the same time. So they're taking on a lot of responsibility and they're a very important element in engaging and motivating high performance in your people.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact that there are a lot of companies like they're thinning that middle area, but it's always funny, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Michele. Like when companies decide to start eliminating management positions in that mighty middle, that all
Yeah.
of a sudden people are like, why do we do that? Like, it's almost like it's like
Take care of
when you go to
that
Vegas and you party too much. Like, why did I do that? I mean, if I know I'm going to pay for it, how often do you see that where people be like, okay, we don't need these middle people, then they wake up the next day be like, oh boy, we messed up.
Yeah, there's a couple things that happen is they pile on. The responsibility doesn't go away. So someone who's left behind has to take on that responsibility. And there's a lot of talk about burnout and people not being able to get their jobs done or not feeling like they have enough time in a day to do their job. So that's part of the problem is that the work's not going away, but they're taking away the jobs and piling the work on somebody else, which is leading to burnout for them. The other thing that is happening is that people get put in managerial roles because they're good at whatever job they're doing. So they could be a good salesperson, they could be a good engineer, they could be a good marketing person, but it doesn't mean that they can be good at management or leadership of people because that's a completely different skill. They could be good at it, but just because they're good at the job, their individual contributor job, does not mean that they will also be a good manager without training them on skills and leadership and management.
Yeah, that training piece is so underrated. And it's funny. I remember a leader told me a while back that they're CEO of a company, and there was an employee there that was there for 10 years and was just like a rock star, was an A+ player. And
Yep.
they brought him into the office one day, like, hey, listen, you're doing a great job. We're going to make you, run this division. You're going to manage this division. And the person said, like, great. How do I do that? And
Yeah.
it's so funny. We assume that, oh, okay, it's just all it's this person has this skill set, so they could definitely do this thing. They've got that in their arsenal, don't they?
Exactly, but it's a totally different skill set that can be learned, but, unfortunately, people are thrown into managerial roles just because they're really good at what they do, and then it's baptism by fire, really.
And all right, so we've glazed the manager position a little bit, but let's be a little critical because sometimes middle managers are only worried about, like what I mentioned, the box checking, just like getting the job done. But how does that fit when you're trying to improve culture? And you kind of make reference to the resistant middle manager. How do you turn that resistant middle manager who's only worried about the going down the list as opposed to becoming an ally in culture?
Yeah, and I don't know. I see resistance usually as not like it's not their true intention is to resist. I see that as a symptom of other things that might be going on. So if you have a manager who is only wanting to check the boxes, there's something else behind that, whether they don't have enough time, they don't know how to do what you're wanting them to do. If they don't want to do it, then they shouldn't be a manager in the first place. But if they don't know how or if they don't have time, those are things that can be fixed. And that's helping them, one, have the information they need, know the expectations of their job. At every company I worked for, we created what was called the role of the manager so that people who had the responsibility for leading other people understood that it was a very special role. It was not an entitlement, it wasn't status, it was a responsibility for other people and their livelihoods, really. So, making clear that the role is a very important role and then giving people the information and skill and training they need to be able to perform and time to perform it to their best because we'll put on performance management systems and expect managers to have all these conversations and hire people. And again, like I said, they have their own jobs to do at the same time. So you have to give them the time and the information along with the responsibility.
Nice. So we talked about horizontal alignment. So we can't go without talking about vertical alignment. And and in part one, we joked about how you're a big systems person. You love a good system, and you say culture lives in systems. Which system is most often out of alignment when it
Oh,
comes to culture?
I would probably say your rewards and recognition system. So you're saying one thing is important, and in some way, you're rewarding or recognizing people for doing something different. So that one, and it's not they overlap, all of them. It's how you structure your organization, the processes you use in your organization, the way decisions are made, the way information is shared, the way people are developed. the way you recognize and reward people. They all are, you can look at them independently, but usually there's one or two of them that can be out of alignment. So, for example, at one company that we worked for, we said collaboration was one of the core values of the company, but it was structured in a geographic structure. So there were 16 different offices, and each office was its own profit center. So they were responsible for bringing in the revenue and the money into their office. And then that's how they got rewarded. So it was a structural issue and also a recognition or reward issue. And so what was happening is these offices, even though they're all part of the same company, they were competing for the same work, sometimes showing up at the same bid, to bid on the same work. So instead of collaborating and using the talent and energy of the entire workforce, we were competing against each other and being rewarded for it because they were responsible for bringing in the revenue and profits into that geographic location. So we changed a couple things. First, we changed from a geographic structure to a business unit structure. So anybody that was in a certain business unit, no matter what location, they were in that business unit serving the clients of that business unit. So we built alignment that way so they could work together to serve the customer. And that's really what we wanted. And then the other piece is we took away the profit went to the business unit instead of the geographic location. So that flowed the reward and recognition into the business unit instead of the geographic location. So people would collaborate for their business unit to win, not for their location or their office to win.
Nice. All right. So on the subject of reward, the ultimate reward is compensation.
Right.
So how does compensation destroy culture if it's not aligned?
So that is a very touchy subject, and I believe that the compensation, your pay and your benefits, your pay needs to be right, and if it's not right, it becomes a dissatisfier. But once it is right, meaning that you're getting compensated for the value that you bring to the organization, more of it doesn't give you more productivity. So it's a very sensitive subject where a lot of times leaders just want to keep throwing money on things, and nobody's going to turn down money. But then you start getting entitled to the money, and that money no longer motivates you to do the work. So that's more of an extrinsic reward, where there are also intrinsic rewards where people will work because they care. People will work because they're doing meaningful work. So if you can associate your purpose and your vision and your values to something that really have an emotional appeal to your employees, and the work that they're doing is meaningful and they feel full as a person, they feel valued as a person, their motivation and productivity will increase, and so will their profits.
Nice. I like that. It's funny. I used to work with a guy who used to have this running line because he used to like cut out of work early, and he would say, "I get paid for my talent, not my time." And I
Mhm.
know this was part of the struggle of the the remote work movement during the pandemic, and even after that, the idea of like, are my employees all putting in their 8 hours of the day, like this old school mentality of like, everyone should be sitting at their desk from 9 to 5 and not move, and have lunch while they're sitting there. But like the idea of putting talent over time, how do when you talk to leaders about that, about stressing the fact that not everyone has to put in that 8 hour day. Maybe they could because of their talent, they get enough stuff done in 6 hours. Tell me about that struggle of the old school, like 8 hours, as opposed to just getting the work you're doing for your talents at whatever time it takes.
Yeah, it's still real. I will say that. It is still very real, and I explain it as during the Industrial Revolution, when you had to keep manufacturing plants open for 24 hours and 3 shifts to make the widgets, to sell and serve the customer, that is a time-based metric. You needed people working the machines in the manufacturing plant in order for us to produce the number of widgets that needed to be produced. But we've moved into the knowledge economy where work doesn't have to be done during 8 to 5. And maybe it can be done in terms of it should be more about the outputs or the results of the work. And so the job should be defined in what is this job supposed to produce, what are the results they're supposed to be getting, and managers need to manage the results, not how the results are getting done or at what time they're getting done. It could even, I mean, it might take 8 hours, but maybe someone is a night owl. So, they don't work well in the morning and their brain fires up in the evening. And so they want to get their work done in the evening. So that it's really a shift in mindset. And even the remote work or the hybrid work, it takes a different management style and a different management capabilities to be able to manage the output of the work and not the time sitting in a chair. I heard over and over people got more stuff done and felt more productive because they didn't have all the interruptions that they had at work. So they felt more efficient working from home. And it allowed people a lot of flexibility as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I often write and talk about how leaders have stressed the return to work. And I often joke that, they have to make up reasons for the return to work. Like they say, we want more collaboration, yet there's no data points. And most leaders, when they want to make a change, they want their data. But when they decide to make a change, they don't care about the data. So I often say, listen, if leaders want people back, just be honest. Just be like,
Bring
hey,
them back.
listen, I'm spending $1 million a year in rent or whatever. So I want people to like, I would rather have that leader be completely like brutally honest as to why they want people back in the office, as opposed to like start making up reasons. And I
Yeah.
know this is not where the bulk of the conversation, but like, man, that honesty piece of like just telling people like what it's all about, as opposed to just like making BS up, man,
Yeah.
that would appeal more, doesn't it?
100%, 100%. People just want to know the why. And if it doesn't matter, they might not like the decision, but if you communicate them to them in a way that's open and honest and transparent, and they trust that you've made the decision with good intention, even though they don't like the decision, they'll be more likely to abide by it and feel better about it, even if they don't like it. So 100%.
All right, I want to throw a curveball question at you, because you mentioned the Industrial Revolution. I know Henry Ford gets a lot of credit for creating the sort of like Monday through Friday 9 to 5 thing. Um, do you see a world where that's changing? I mean, I mean, you see the books about the 4 day work week, and the 5 hour work, whatever, all the things people have thrown out there, because it feels like as much as technology has changed, whether it's the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, the tech revolution, yet we're still in this world where we're all waking up on Monday morning grumpy to put in our 8 hours. Like, have you ever thought about or talked to leaders about the fact that like maybe this 9 to 5 Monday through Friday thing really shouldn't live on forever and ever, just because it's one of those things. And one of the things I always rally about is like, it's because we've always done it this way. So have you ever, again, I know it's like a curveball question, but have you ever thought about that, talked to leaders about that idea?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And it's actually, in my mind, even bigger than that. Even if you think of school systems or working parents, where now there are two parents that are going to work and the kids get picked up. I mean, I'll go to yoga at 6:30 in the morning and the school buses are already picking kids up at 6:30 in the morning. And there's research that says the kids need their sleep. They need to sleep in. So and then they get off at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but parents have to work until 5 or 6. So then what do you do with the kids in those afternoon hours? And those afternoon hours are the times when people can get in trouble and, cause some issues. So it is really a societal issue. And the idea of work, I do believe there are times when people need to be in person. And I also do believe that meeting in person and having those relationships built help you to work when you are not together. They help you work better when you are not together, whether you live in different countries, whether you live in different cities, or work remotely. So I do think that the relationship building is very important. In-person meetings, there are some meetings that I think you should do in person. But I've also seen where people have employees come back to the office, but they're still on Teams all day long. There's people right down the hall and they're still on Teams. And so the employees are thinking, why did I have to do my commute all the way into the office in order just to have Teams meetings when I could have saved myself, 30 to 60 minutes a day in driving time and done the exact same thing from home?
Yeah, that's always been my argument about the return to work, is like, make it worth everyone's while, like especially with knowledge workers and white collar jobs. Like I've been in offices, Michelle, you've been in offices where you walk down the hall and everyone is literally glued to their screen with earbuds or headphones on.
Yeah,
And so how does that like random conversation happen if you don't know you can actually say hi to a person or talk to them? So I wonder, and I think you make a great point. Like make it intentional, like create meetings and make it so that people are coming in for a reason. Because this idea of like the random collaboration in the water cooler, like that's
yeah,
all BS. No one's getting up off their desk. They're staring at the screen for the majority of the day. So all of this mystical things you see happening are not going to happen. It's just because, and you know, technology may be to blame, but it also is a benefit as well in terms of like how people get their work done. They're literally just in front of a screen.
exactly. Exactly. So yes, and in one of the companies that I worked for during and after the pandemic, we did create a hybrid work model, and we gave some instructions around be in the office on these days and for these kind of meetings. And these kind of meetings should be meetings that are held in person because of what is being discussed and how it's being discussed, and that will help you make better decisions and move the team forward. And so we got nitty gritty on when you're in the office, these are the in office days, and let's have these kind of meetings during those days. We also designed the building to collaborate. So there were 3 floors in the building, but we had one, we called it Cafe Connect. We had one lunchroom and we called it Cafe Connect so that everybody had to go There were only microwaves in the lunchroom, so you couldn't warm up your food, you had to go to Cafe Connect to warm up your food, and that so we were creating times when people would, wait there 60 seconds for their food to warm up, that there'd be other people hanging around waiting for the microwaves, and, they would chat with people from other parts of the company. So that really did work, and it worked well. We also put some ping pong tables in there so people after lunch would go and play ping pong together and create opportunities for people to be around each other and do things outside different than just working meetings as well.
Nice, good stuff. All right, so you write in the book that culture is never done.
Yeah.
So how do organizations keep it alive for longer periods? You know, after Michelle Herlein's left the office, like what happens to keep it alive well past like you know obviously that honeymoon phase of all the new things you're putting in there, but like after months and years go by, how do you keep it consistent?
Well, I recommend, we do annual strategy meetings, and annual planning meetings. And I recommend that the culture conversation is always a part of that meeting, that there are 2 sides to getting results. There is the strategy side and the culture side. And as Peter Drucker told us, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. So during those strategy meetings, I think there should be a culture continuity conversation. Are these values still the values that we live by? Are we living these values? Are our people living these values? And on an annual basis, have those conversations. The other thing that's important is, organizations are not stagnant. People leave, they retire, you hire new people. So as when new people come on board, when especially at the leadership level, there needs to be the time to reset and make sure that with the new team member that they understand the direction, buy into it, but it's also an opportunity to say from your eyes, what are you seeing? You have new eyes now coming in, and here's what we say is important. Is this what we're actually living? What do you see? So it's always keeping it top of mind. The other is in mergers and acquisitions. So I worked with a company earlier this year that was being bought by another company, but they had spent 5 years building their really strong culture. And they brought me in to create culture. We did culture continuity scenario planning. So if they got purchased, how are we going to continue this culture that we've created and take care of our people? And if we don't end up being purchased, how are we going to continue this culture? And that was the harder of the 2 decisions, actually, because everybody wanted to be bought by this other company. So those are moments of change in an organization. So at least annually, you should make culture continuity a part of your strategic planning process. And then if things do change through leadership changes, new people joining the organization or mergers and acquisitions, you should always make culture a part of those conversations as well.
Excellent. All right, so let's wrap things up on a personal note, because I want to get this right. You're a founder, a mom, a grandmother, a paddleboarder, a lifelong learner. What personal practices keep you aligned? You mentioned yoga earlier. I don't know if that's your go-to, but like, what do you do to keep it all aligned and all in focus in what you're doing in life?
Well, I have a 20, probably 30-year practice where I drink my coffee by candlelight every morning and I ease into the day and I don't miss it. I have missed yoga if I'm traveling. I've missed my exercise in the morning if I'm traveling, but I do not miss my morning gratitude time. So I have a gratitude journal that I've written in for almost 30 years to start my day with intention and to kind of set my own attitude right, so that I can make sure that I'm aligned and grounded within myself so that I can be there and show up for others. And then on top of that, then I do have a yoga practice that's probably been about 10 years, and an exercise routine. Um, Taking time with family is very important to me and being with others. I really love being part of a team and helping make dreams come true.
I love it. I love it. All right, so let's finish with a Mad Libs here, Michele. Finish the sentence for me. The heart of an organization is strongest when?
The heart of an organization is the strongest when your people are aligned around your mission, vision, and your values.
Nice, nice. Her name is Michele Herlein. The name of the book is Cultural Excellence. Michele, lastly, as we wrap things up, folks want to work with you, find out more about you, where should they start?
You can go to my website at michelleherlein.com.
Awesome. Michele, it's been a pleasure chatting with you these last couple episodes. I wish you the best of luck in 2026.
Thank you, Joe. Same to you.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Michele and her other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.